Lieutenant General Shekatkar, Vice Admiral Puleri, Excellencies, senior officers from the armed forces, both serving and retired, friends from across the world, eminent participants for this session, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a distinct honor for me to be present here for the first edition of the SAGAR discourse, which, as we have seen over the last 2 days, has covered a span of the entire maritime domain and is firmly anchored in the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi as SAGAR, which is security and growth for all in the region. As a maritime nation, India has a glorious maritime heritage covering over 5,000 years, and the Indian seaboard has been the vortex of intense maritime activity over centuries. The Indus Valley civilization, which existed in the western part of the country, dates back to 3300 BC, and even today we have a dry dock at Lothal in Gujarat, which dates back to 2200 BC. It is from these small ports that ancient seafarers sailed off to distant lands in Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, and the east coast of Africa. On the east coast of India, we had the seafaring kingdoms of the Kalingas, the Cholas, Pandyas, and Cheras, who sailed off to Southeast Asia to establish trade and cultural links. And even today, we can see glimpses of India's rich cultural heritage in these countries. The British period was a period of extensive shipbuilding in India, and commencing 1753, over 144 merchant ships, 115 warships, including 84 gunships for the Royal Navy, were built in Bombay docks, which is the exact same location of the naval dockyard at Mumbai today. Some of the most famous ships in the world were built during that period. HMS Trincomalee is the oldest warship afloat in the world today and is berthed in Hartlepool in UK. And HMS Trincomalee was built in Bombay docks in 1817, 200 years ago. The national anthem of United States of America, the Star-Spangled Banner, was written by Francis Key in Baltimore on board a ship, HMS Minden. And that ship, HMS Minden, ladies and gentlemen, was built in India. The Treaty of Nanking, ceding Hong Kong to the British, was signed on board another famous warship, HMS Cornwallis, also built in Bombay docks. Regrettably, when the transition took place from sail to steam and wood to steel, we got left behind because India was then not part of the Industrial Revolution, and the revival of our maritime capabilities took place post-independence in the latter part of the 20th century. Today, India occupies a dominant position in the Indian Ocean, and the country sits astride busy sea lines of communication which transit across the Indian Ocean, over which 100,000 ships transit every year, carrying 66% of the world's oil, 50% of the world's container traffic, and 33% of the world's cargo traffic. Our blue planet, the Earth, has a dominance of the maritime domain, with over 70% of the Earth's surface covered by water, nearly 80% of the world's population living within 200 nautical miles of the coast, and 90% of the world's trade transiting by sea. As we heard over the last 2 days, oceans are central to life on Earth. They are rich in oil and mineral resources. They are the suppliers of oxygen, absorbers of carbon dioxide, a virtual heat sink rich in biodiversity. With depletion of resources on land, humankind has turned towards the seas for resources. And there is a misperception that the oceans are an unending resource base and an infinite sink. Nothing could be further away from reality. And over the past few decades, we have witnessed indiscriminate pollution of the oceans and contamination of the natural marine habitat, resulting in a detrimental impact of climate change in the oceans. Studies have indicated that nearly 80% of all pollutants in the ocean, as was also mentioned by Admiral Columbage yesterday, emanate from land. And if the current rate of pollution continues, in a few decades we will have more plastic in the ocean than fish. Something that was mentioned by the two ambassadors this morning and even yesterday. The concept of blue economy has emerged as a new paradigm. And I would like to define harnessing the blue economy as the economic development of our maritime interests by optimal utilization of resources with minimum impact on the environment and ensuring sustained development of the oceans. India is essentially a maritime nation with a natural outflow towards the seas. We have a long coastline of 7,516 kilometers and an exclusive economic zone of over 2 million square kilometers. Over 90% of our trade by volume, 72% by value, transits by sea, and this accounts for nearly 50% of the country's GDP. Our maritime interests have a vital relationship with the nation's economic growth. And in recent years, under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, there have been a series of initiatives and developments in the maritime domain, including the transition from the Look East to the Act East policy. These initiatives will act as catalysts to further strengthen India's growth as a credible maritime power. Our maritime interests are also enablers of our blue economy, and I would like to highlight some of the maritime sectors which are likely to witness significant growth in the coming years and will also act as avenues for harnessing the blue economy and maritime cooperation with the countries of the world. India has 12 major ports and over 200 minor and intermediate ports. The cargo handling capacity, which stands today at 1,500 million metric tons per annum, is likely to increase to 2,500 or even 3,000 million metric tons per annum over the next 10 years. As we heard the Honorable Minister yesterday, the government has launched an ambitious SAGAR project, which is a port-led development initiative based on 4 pillars of port modernization, connectivity, port-led industrialization, and coastal community development. Actually, Sagarmala comprises about 150 projects with an envisaged investment of $60 billion US. We will also see the aspect related to the 5th pillar, which Captain Prasha spoke about, which is the coastal shipping. And the other aim is to ensure interconnectivity between the major and minor ports and the hinterland through road, rail network and development of inland waterways. India has over 15,000 kilometers of navigable inland waterways, and in the first phase, over 4,500 kilometers are being developed as 5 major national waterways, because we know that travel and movement over sea and water is cheaper, safer, as well as it is cleaner. These will open up avenues for greenfield infrastructure development in the port development sector, a stronger economy, and also employment opportunities in the maritime sector. India has a vibrant shipbuilding industry with over 27 shipyards, and recently the government has given a major boost to the shipbuilding industry by according it the special infrastructure status and also permitting 100% foreign direct investment into shipbuilding. An area I would like to specifically mention is that about warship building in India. For over 50 years now, our naval designers have designed and our indigenous shipyards have built ships for the Indian Navy, resulting in our transformation from a buyer's navy to a builder's navy. The blueprint for the future Indian Navy is firmly anchored on self-reliance and indigenization. And it's a matter of great pride, and it should make every Indian proud to learn that all the 40 ships and submarines under construction today are being built in Indian shipyards, both public and private. It is our endeavor to progressively increase the indigenous content so that future warships can be 100% made in India. This would open up avenues for joint venture partnerships in the shipbuilding sector and offer employment opportunities in shipbuilding. India has a thriving fishing industry with 250,000 fishing boats, 4 million active fishermen, 14 million part of the fishing community, and our annual catch is in the region of upwards of 10 million metric tons, which earns us $5.5 billion of foreign exchange on account of fisheries exports. But ladies and gentlemen, this is only scratching the surface, because 90% of fishing in Indian waters is restricted to coastal areas, whereas we have the entire 200 nautical miles of the exclusive economic zone to be exploited. There's hardly any fishing in deep Indian waters. And it is said that fish in deep Indian waters are dying of old age. This provides a unique opportunity for deep sea fishing projects, which will also result in coastal community development and provide employment in the fishing sector. India has about 1,300 islands and islets as part of the Andaman and Nicobar group in the Bay of Bengal and the Lakshadweep group in the Arabian Sea. The government has prepared a comprehensive island development plan taking into account aspects of security, economic sustenance, the environment preservation, social and cultural sustenance. The aim is to develop greenfield infrastructure projects and also controlled eco-tourism. This would open up a host of opportunities in marine tourism, in development of marinas and cruise tourism in India. The other sectors which are likely to witness growth include offshore oil and gas exploration, deep seabed mining, and renewable sources of ocean energy such as wave energy, tidal energy, and ocean thermal energy conversion. It can therefore be seen that we have an ocean of opportunities for economic development of our maritime interests. The challenge, however, is to ensure that these are greenfield projects with a zero carbon footprint. We therefore need to outline a comprehensive way ahead for harnessing our blue economy and sustained development of the oceans. The Indian Ocean has emerged as the world's center of gravity in the maritime domain. It is the third largest water body, spanning an area of 68.5 million square kilometers, and countries on the rim of the Indian Ocean are home to nearly 1/3 of humanity. The threats and challenges on the waters of the Indian Ocean are as wide and varied as they come. Who could have imagined that in the 21st century we would once again be grappling with pirates, or that the major threat in the maritime domain would be from asymmetric warfare and maritime terrorism? But that is the reality today, and the other challenges include arms trafficking, drugs smuggling, human trafficking, and poaching. Another threat on the waters of the Indian Ocean is that nearly 70% of all extreme climate conditions turn into natural disasters. And our navies and coast guards have to be ready to provide humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. The instabilities and turbulences on land in some part of the Indian Ocean region have the potential to spill over into the maritime domain. And the situation can best be described as fragile. Consequently, over 120 warships from over 20 navies are always present in the Indian Ocean to safeguard their maritime interests. India has vast maritime interests, and the responsibility of protecting these interests falls squarely on the shoulders of men in white uniform, because it is the responsibility of the Navy and the Coast Guard to ensure that our maritime interests, which have a vital relationship with the nation's economic growth, are allowed to develop unhindered at all times. The Indian Navy has emerged as a multi-dimensional network force which is ready to take on any challenge in the maritime domain of the Indian Ocean. To meet the constabulary role, the Indian Navy ensures coastal and offshore security in coordination with the Coast Guard. And in recent years, we have leveraged technology to enhance the maritime domain awareness. Ships of the Indian Navy have been continuously deployed in the Gulf of Aden for anti-piracy patrols since 2008. We also deploy our ships and aircraft for EEZ patrols and coordinated patrols in the waters of some of our littoral neighbors in coordination with the maritime agencies of these countries. To meet the diplomatic role, the Indian Navy has expanded its operational footprint across the Indian Ocean and beyond to interact and carry out exercises with navies of the world. We also carry out capacity building and capability enhancement initiatives and information exchange to enhance maritime domain awareness. The aim is to shape a favorable maritime environment in the Indian Ocean region. In 2008, the Indian Navy launched a unique initiative, the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, as a maritime construct to promote cooperation among navies of the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean Rim Association is another forum, which is a forum to manage the maritime affairs of countries of the IOR. To further promote cooperation among navies of the world, the Indian Navy conducted the International Fleet Review at Visakhapatnam last year, where 50 navies of the world came together to strengthen bridges of friendship. The underlying theme of the Fleet Review was that we may be separated by geography, but we are certainly united through oceans. Speaking at the International Fleet Review, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, outlined his vision for the blue economy, and he also linked with the blue chakra or the wheel on our national flag with the potential of our blue economy. He later spoke at the Maritime Summit and articulated the vision for Maritime India. The recent initiatives by India in the maritime domain are pointers to indicate that India has once again turned towards the seas and is destined to emerge as a resurgent maritime nation in the 21st century. In conclusion, I would like to highlight 6 major takeaways. The United Nations document Transforming Our World, Agenda 2030, and the SDG 14 provide a template for conservation of the oceans, seas and resources. We now need to outline a perspective plan for sustained development and growth for different avenues in the maritime sector. As a maritime nation, India has considerable potential to harness the blue economy, and we need to chart a comprehensive way ahead to draft a national maritime policy on the blue economy for sustained development of the oceans. There is also a need for an apex level organization to coordinate and integrate the planning processes of different stakeholders in the maritime domain for economic development of our maritime interests to emerge as a resurgent maritime nation. The Indian Ocean Naval Symposium and the Indian Ocean Rim Association are 2 maritime constructs for managing the maritime affairs. There needs to be greater interaction between the 2 agencies and organizations so as to provide synergy for maritime cooperation among navies and countries of the Indian Ocean region. To fully implement the Honorable Prime Minister's vision of SAGAR, which is security and growth in the region, we need to draft a detailed maritime cooperation roadmap with a whole-of-government approach for promoting cooperation among the countries of the region, and also with the aim to shape a favorable and a positive environment in the Indian Ocean region. And finally, the Honorable Prime Minister has started a movement of Swachh India. Today, I would like to recommend that we have a movement of Swachh SAGAR, which is clean oceans. And actually, SAGAR Discourse 1.0 should be the beginning of such a movement, which should rely on the power of one. It should be the people's movement where every individual, not only in India, but across the world, should take a pledge, and we need to come out with an action plan to make our coastlines and oceans clean once again. The seas around us are gaining newfound importance as each day goes by, and I have no doubt that the current century is the century of the seas. I am sure that the deliberations during this conference will throw up some suggestions for harnessing the blue economy, as well as for promoting cooperation among the nations of the world across the global commons. Thank you, and Jai.